Here we are on Strand. Too much to cover. We're not even gonna go down there today. So peaceful, so tranquil. Welcome to Galveston Unscripted. Oh, and Allie, I gotta be honest, it is really cool when you're walking around filming a video and someone pulls up and says, hey, I just watched your other video 20 minutes ago. Here we go. It is unbelievably peaceful on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Starting the walk in the Lost Bayou Historic District. The Lost Bayou District is named Lost Bayou because of the bayou that was lost. Hitchcock's Bayou was filled in. If you look at old maps, the 1880s and before, you'll see that there was a large body of water between the beach and Broadway named Hitchcock's Bayou. As the city was growing, the bayou was filled in and built over. So as you roam around Galveston, you'll see fire stations like this one here all over the place. This one here was completed in 1891. One thing I love is how photogenic this island is. Pretty much any time, but especially when the sun is rising or setting. And the power lines. I don't know why I like power lines. Here we go, crossing Broadway. So you notice all of the Mexican fan palms all over the island. This type of palm tree isn't even native to Galveston, not even this area of Texas. So when Galveston was founded, it's really hard to imagine today with all the oak trees, palm trees, oleanders. Galveston was barren. It was a barren sandbar, some grasses, maybe a few trees, a lot of wildlife, but all these palm trees we see were brought here or volunteers. One of the cool things about the East End Historic District, just like many of Galveston's other historic districts, is I could walk through the East End Historic District for days and days and days and never really notice everything. So if you've been through the East End Historic District in the past 14 years, you've probably noticed there aren't too many trees. And I've mentioned it before here. During Hurricane Ike, there was tons of saltwater inundation, pretty much destroying most of the oak trees on this part of the island. But it kind of takes you back a little bit. Look at photos after the 1900 storm, even pre, there weren't very many mature trees. Always really enjoy on windless days how you can hear the Gulf of Mexico on one side of the island. And if you listen really closely, you can hear port operations going on right over there. Galveston's so slender that really you can experience and understand how slim the island really is. To travel from one side to the other like I'm doing right now is extremely easy. This may be self-explanatory, but I'm not sure how many people know that not just 1 or 2 or 100 houses are considered historic in these areas. This entire district is a blanket historic district. All of Galveston's historic districts, they are blanket historic districts. Here we have the Lands McDonough House. Hundreds of people survived the 1900 storm in this home. You could imagine if you were living in a smaller wooden home, even like this one or some of these on this side, you might feel a little bit more comfortable in a home like this on 15th and Post Office. If you're ever roaming around Galveston and you're wondering, how do you know if a house survived the 1900 storm? All you have to do is look for this plaque right here. This little plaque indicates that this house did, in fact, survive a 1900 storm, although it may or may not have been at that location. A lot of homes were moved around after the 1900 storm to make way for the grade raising, where they elevated the entire urbanized portion of Galveston. Also, just because the house doesn't have a 1900 storm survivor plaque doesn't mean it didn't survive the 1900 storm. So if you've never been to Galveston or the East End Historic District, what is always fun to notice is how you have the port, which is 4 blocks that way. If I spin around, standing here on Post Office, we have the beach 10 blocks that way. Really not a wide island, extremely walkable. Here we are at the east end of the downtown historic district on Market Street. Does anyone ever wonder why Market Street is named Market Street? I'll tell you. A lot of people might wonder, maybe Market Street was named Market Street because that's where all of the stores and markets were in the late 1800s during Galveston's huge economic boom. But the name actually goes back way farther than that. Actually, before the city of Galveston was founded in 1839. If you've ever noticed this little strip of land between Market Street and Strand, doesn't really make too much sense, does it? We don't think of 20th Street as being the center or the middle of the city these days. But back then, in the 1830s, 20th Street is where everything happened. It was the direct line down to the harbor, where one of the first major wharves was actually built. So 20th Street, between what we now know as Market Street and Strand, was central. So before the grid of the city's street system was laid out, this little strip of land became the city's open market. mainly because it was so close to the harbor where you could actually get goods in and out before you had a major port system. So logistically, it made sense. If you want to know in more detail, you can always read this historic marker and pause now. So the city's open market eventually evolved into City Hall in 1846. Market Street, also known as Avenue D, was named Market Street because of the city's centralized market that was set up right down this strip. As I'm walking towards the port, towards the harbor now, just 130 years ago, I'd probably be standing on a long finger pier out into the water or in the water itself. So right here we have the Henley Building, famously known for its role in the Battle of Galveston in 1863. So as I am crossing Harborside, also known as Water Street in the 1800s, I am crossing into a section of Texas that not only had a part in building the Republic and state of Texas, but played a huge role in building the American West. So what we see and know now as the Port of Galveston, the fourth busiest cruise port in the United States, has not only hosted passenger ships similar to this, but was also a major immigration port through the 1800s and into the early 1900s. Tens of thousands of people from all over the world, mainly Europe, immigrated through Galveston into Texas and to America itself, giving Galveston the nickname Ellis Island of the South. The Port of Galveston not only connects us to the Texas City and Houston ship channels, but once you go right out this way and you take a right, you're in the Gulf of Mexico, connecting you to the rest of the world. Galveston would be pretty much a small beach town if it weren't for this port. Once the largest in Texas, once one of the largest on the Gulf Coast, competed with New Orleans and New York, logistically favorable over hundreds of other ports in the United States and North America. One thing you may or may not notice about Pelican Island over here is that it is mostly man-made. That's right, it's a man-made island, and it's gigantic. So compare a new map with an old map. Where do you think most of the land came from? As the Houston, Galveston, and Texas City ship channels were being dredged in the early 20th century, you have to find somewhere to put that mud that you're pulling from the bottom of your ship channel. Pelican Island was that place to drop your mud. All right, y'all, as the sun is coming up, that is my cue to go ahead and start running. If you guys want to know more, like much more, deep dive into some of these topics, check out my podcast, available on all podcast platforms and YouTube. We sit down with the experts, doctors, historians, authors, the people who know their stuff. And we talk about all of these topics, how Galveston, Texas played and still plays a significant role in Texas and American history. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.